Welcome to the Invest for More Real Estate Podcast. My name is Mark Ferguson, and I am your host. I'm a house flipper. I flip 10 to 15 houses a year. I own 13 rental properties with a goal to buy 100 by 2023. I'm also a real estate agent. I've been licensed since '01. I run a team of 9. We sell close to 200 houses a year. So on this show, we like to interview house flippers, landlords, and the best real estate agents in the business. So stay tuned for some great shows. If you want more information on my rentals, on the numbers, how I buy properties, check out investformore.com. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Invest for More podcast. This is Mark Ferguson with Invest for More. So today I'm super excited to have a great guest on the show, Sharon Vornholt, who is with LouisvilleGalsRealEstateBlog.com. So Sharon has been a real estate investor since 1998. She became a full-time investor in 2008, and her specialty right now is wholesaling, but we're going to talk a lot more about rental properties and what she's doing right now. So thanks a lot for being on the show, Sharon. How are you doing?
Well, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Great. Well, thank you. First, just a quick introduction. I know you used to run an inspection company, a house inspection company, before you became an investor. Is that right?
Yeah, in 1991, I opened up a home inspection company, and I actually did that for 17 years. But long around 1998 was when I started investing in real estate. A realtor friend of mine took me to my first RIA meeting, and I was pretty much hooked from then on. And so I did both for, probably about 10 years, and in 2008, I closed the home inspection business, and that's when I started investing full-time.
I would imagine with a home inspector background, that gave you a huge advantage, knowing what to know when you're looking at properties. And also, you probably had a pretty good idea about the real estate market in your area because you're seeing so many houses doing inspections.
Yeah, I was just a lowly owner now, but, I did all of the inspector trainings with the inspectors. So, yeah, I did. It did give me, I think, an edge as far as being able to walk into a house and knowing certain things like the major systems. I knew what to look for, what was going to be expensive, and, what was maybe looked bad, but it was really cosmetic. So, yeah, I would say that was a bonus for sure. And also, you're right, I did know the real estate market. I knew neighborhoods. We did radon testing, which involved some of us picking up radon monitors, so that was a problem in our area. Yeah, I got to where I really knew the neighborhoods. We always knew how much houses cost. We would have that information, would come up during the inspection. So, yeah, I would say it was a definite edge.
Now, in 1998, what was your first real estate investment? Did you do a flip? Were you buying rental properties? What was the first deal you did?
The first deal I did was a rehab. When I started out, I had a plan. And my plan was that I was going to rehab a couple of houses and then take the money that I earned from that, from those rehabs and buy a rental or two. And that's what I did for a while. I just kind of went along doing that. And I wasn't, I was a little bit slower at doing it because I had another full-time business, but I just continued to work my plan. And then in 2008, as you know, the bottom dropped out of the real estate market. So it was really at that time, the rehabs were starting to stay on the market a lot longer, than they had before. Before you could rehab a house and it would sell pretty fast. But in Louisville, Kentucky, during 2008, when that just really came to a standstill. And it wasn't unusual to have a house on the market for 9 months or a year. And I just did not want to have my property sitting there, accruing interest on the construction loans and those sorts of things. So it was really at that time I became an accidental wholesaler, I like to tell people. I just got a house and I'm thinking, gosh, I just don't want to be sitting here with this house 9 months from now. And I just called up an investor friend of mine and said, hey, you want to buy a house? And he said, sure. So that was how I ended up segueing into wholesaling.
I know when I do my fix and flips, I'm still flipping now, and I did my first wholesale deal this year. It was kind of accidental as well. It was a property that was 45 miles away from me, and I didn't want to fix it because it's so far away, and my contractors didn't want to go out there. So I stuck a for sale by owner sign in the yard, and a couple months later, of course, right when my contractor was finally able, said, okay, I guess I can go do that one. An agent called me and said, hey, is this house for sale? And I said, yeah. And I told him the price, and I said, okay, we'll buy it. I was like, hey, great. It was a great feeling just making a profit without doing any work. But on the flips, I know what you mean. If I try and get mine sold in under 6 months, which doesn't always happen, but the longer you hold them, the more cost you have and the more risk you have that the market could turn even worse as well. So I can understand.
Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, everything is affected because people can break into your house. The longer you have it, the vandalism goes up. You know, your insurance costs go up on vacant houses. So it really, after, like you said, after about 6 months, you really start seeing a dent in your profits.
Yes, so I had a flip that actually took me over a year that I sold this year, but that was because it was a massive rehab and mostly my fault it took that long, but we still made some money on it, thankfully. How many rentals did you end up buying from 98 to 2008? Were you buying a lot of them or just kind of buying one here and there?
I was just buying one or two along, and actually, I have to tell you, I hated being a landlord, but I knew intellectually it was the path to wealth. So I hung in there for some years, and then one day I had a friend say to me, you know, we were talking about rentals, and this was another investor in my area, and he had, 80 or 100 at the time. He had a lot of houses. And he said to me, you know, Sharon, you got to have at least 50, or you just got to own up to the fact if you don't have 30 to 50, you've just got a painful hobby, and you just need to not do that. And in that moment, I thought, there is just no way I want 50 or 100 houses. So I'm just not doing that. And I just got rid of my rentals and decided that I would, you know, find passive income a different way, which is what I've done. But, you know, a lot of people like being a landlord, and it just was something that I just hated doing.
Yeah, I can understand that. I have 13 rentals now, and my wife and I managed up until we had 6. And once we got to 6, she pretty much told me, I'm not going to do this anymore. You've got to figure out something else. So that's when we switched the management over to someone on my team. And so now we pay them 8% a month to manage our properties. And it's so nice. I mean, it cuts into the profit a little bit, but it's so worth it. Just not dealing with the hassles. And I love having someone else manage them. I still love to buy them, but have someone else take care of the tenants and rent.
Yeah, I think if you can get the management hassles off your hands, and I think you have to have probably at least 6 or 8 to financially be able to do that, unless you're smart enough in the beginning to buy them cheap enough so that when your numbers are all in, you know, like you would know to do that today. When you're figuring out your numbers for the house, that you include the property management fee in there, you're okay. But if I don't know what you did, but my first few houses, I didn't do that. You know, I always just planned on managing them myself, at least for, you know, till I got a lot more. So the margins weren't really great, you know, in my case, you know, to add a property manager.
Right. Yep. And in the first couple of properties I bought, I did not factor for any property management. I didn't factor for any vacancies. I didn't factor for any maintenance. I just assumed everything would be perfect. But yeah, you learn pretty quickly that that's not the best way to project your income.
That is not going to happen, is it?
Yeah. Luckily, I got really good deals on them. I always knew how to do that from my flipping, but it didn't make quite as much money as I projected once I realized, oh yeah, even if you repair a house fully before you rent it, things are going to break. People are going to move out. Some people will be late on rent. It's going to happen. So yeah, now I preach you have to consider maintenance, vacancies, and at some point property management as well. All right.
Yeah, if you know that going in, you're okay. But, you know, let's face it, when you're brand new, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep, exactly. So you switched over to wholesaling, and then that's pretty much all you're doing right now, right? Or are you still doing a few rehabs?
I'm not. I'm thinking about it because I really love rehabbing. I like taking the old house and making it look really pretty. So I really like rehabbing. But for now, I'm just so busy. I'm primarily just wholesaling.
Right. How many wholesale deals do you think you do every month or in a given year?
Oh, it changes from year to year, Mark. Last year I didn't do quite as many because I was concentrating a lot more on the other side of my business. Some years I do a lot. Some years I do less. But it just depends because I've kind of been moving toward hiring some people to help me on the real estate side of the business so that I can be free to do some more of the teaching and the coaching and the events and those types of things. I still want to invest, but I only have so many hours in a day. So it just really depends, from year to year where my big focus is.
Yep. No, I understand that completely. Last year, I wanted to buy I think it was 7 rental properties I wanted to buy, and then I ended up having 10 fix and flips at one time at the end of the year, and all my focus was on flipping, and I only bought 3 rentals, and I looked back at my goals, and I was like, well, all my focus was on the fix and flipping. It's no wonder I wasn't buying rental properties, and it just, where you focus your time, where you focus your attention, it's amazing how that part of the business will grow, and anything else that you're doing, it's just hard to keep it going as strong as you want.
Yeah, it's hard to balance it all, and I think, for me, I've been too slow to add enough team members. It's really hard for me to give up control, so that's been an issue, and I tell other people, don't do what I did. Hire early, hire a lot faster than what I've done.
I would completely agree with that. When I first became really successful in real estate, it wasn't as an investor. It was listing houses as a real estate agent, listing HUD homes and REO properties. And for a while there, I was working 12-hour days, working the weekends. And luckily at that time I didn't have kids yet, but I did have a wife. And there's no way I could keep it going. And I was almost forced to hire somebody. And that was one of the best decisions I ever made. And you don't realize how much that weighs on you working that much. And also you have the choice of delegating things you don't want to do. And when you don't have to do the stuff that annoys you, you get so much happier and get so much more done. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I think I was talking to someone recently, and he said that you can be the cog in the wheel. Sometimes you need to get out of the way, and so that your team members can actually jump in there and they can keep things rolling. When everything has to come by you and everything stops on your desk, that in itself is a problem even after you have team members. So it's really hard to figure it all out because, let's face it, entrepreneurs are type A control freaks, and they just don't want to give up that hold on whatever it is.
Not only does it slow things down, but I realized that I can't do everything better than everybody else. You kind of think that. You think that in your head, oh, well, I don't want to hire somebody because they might, mess up this task or they might screw this up and cost me business. And once you hire them, you realize, oh, wait a second, these things are being done faster and with better quality than I was doing them because I didn't have the time to do them right. And I was hurrying through things. And with this person just focusing on that, all of a sudden, I'm doing my better job. I'm doing my job better now. So it is hard to get over. Yes. But it's really hard to take that step and to hire that person. But then you realize that the money you spend is going to make you much, much more money. On your wholesale properties, I know I find most of my deals on the MLS. I do some direct marketing here and there. But you're primarily getting your properties off market. Is that still the case?
Yeah, it is because once again, I know you have agents and you have a little bit better, probably a whole lot better system for finding properties on the MLS. But yeah, my deals are mostly all off market. I get some leads through my website. Still get some referrals, but yeah, I do a lot of direct mail.
How did you get started doing direct mail? Was that through a real estate club, or did you have a mentor or someone that helped you with that, or was it your own research? How did that all get started?
Well, actually, we did direct mail in the home inspection business. You got to remember, back in 1991 was actually really before the internet, it was just getting started, I guess, in the early 90s. So there weren't things like lead generation websites and things like that. But we did direct mail. This would be kind of comical today, but we used to go deliver flyers and put them in the realtors' mailboxes. We did all of those sorts of things. So when I started investing, it was just a natural fit that I would do direct mail. And if you're targeting absentee owners, a lot of different niches, that's the way you're going to reach them is through direct mail. They're not going to show up on the MLS unless they decide to list their house, and then it may or may not be an investor deal. It may not be a distressed property. If you're not a realtor and you don't have that option of then listing that house, then you're going to lose a lot. You're going to lose a lot of leads that way.
Nope, very true. Yeah, and I do direct mailing to absentee owners, and I'm trying to perfect my system. It's tough to figure out how many to send out and when to send them out. And then also my biggest problem, which I'm trying to fix now, is I used to have all the calls go to my cell phone. I'm really bad at answering my phone, so most of them would not get answered. And then many times, those people aren't leaving voicemails. So I know we're losing a lot of calls that way. So we changed it to a dedicated cell phone. So now only those calls go to one number, and then we can call everybody back whether they leave a message or not. And I stuck one of my team members on it who's an awesome agent, and I know will follow up and call them back. And that's helped so far. But is that similar to how you do it? Do you have a dedicated phone number and someone else who's calling, or are you doing all the calling yourself still?
Well, I've been having things. I've tried different things. I've had them go through a Google Voice number. I've tried different things, and none of them I've been real happy with because I'm kind of like you. You get busy and you miss the calls. Like if I'm on this podcast right now and my phone rings, I can't answer the phone. So that's a call that you can't answer. So I think it's best if you can have someone to answer your phone. Now, in your case, you've got people in your office. But if you don't have someone in your office, there are a couple of services. And I've just talked to a lady recently. She answers telephones for real estate investors. And so I think she's something I'm going to be putting that out there to folks, because there's really only been one game in town where that was concerned pretty much, Pat Live. And this gal has been trained by Ron LeGrand. So she seems to have a pretty good grasp, with her people. She trains her people to answer the phones. But, yeah, it's a challenge, because here's the other part of it. When you've been doing this for 20 years, you don't particularly want to pick up the phone every time, and your phone needs to be answered. That's kind of the way it is. You just get tired of always being a slave to your phone.
Yes, I completely agree. And it's really bad now. I've been trying to shift my business so that I don't have to answer my phone, because it's one of the things I dislike the most. And anymore, my phone doesn't ring, and I don't even have it on vibrate. The only way I know it's ringing is if I see it on the screen light up. So, but I've set up so my team takes the calls, and because I'm not as good on the phone as they are, and I'm not as good at answering it. So I know I'll get better results if I have someone else doing it, and I focus on the things I'm best at. Okay, very cool. So you've done the wholesaling, you've done the rehabbing, you've done the rental properties, and I'm not sure how long it's been, but you've been shifting a lot towards your online presence, helping coach people, and you've got your blog. It's Louisville Gals Real Estate Blog.com. How did you start that blog? How did it come into your head?
I thought it was a good way to build a brand, and really it was kind of like we all fly by the seat of our pants. I figured out how to set up a WordPress site, and I was never a writer, but I just started writing, and it just gave me a voice and gave me a way to communicate with other people. And as it turned out, I love blogging. I really do like the process of getting your thoughts out there. And it all kind of led to, how one thing leads to another. And it just led to me where I would talk to a lot of people. I would get a lot of questions. And that in itself, while it's what I love to do, it takes up a tremendous amount of time if you're getting 8 or 10 people contacting you every day. So then I tried to set up mechanisms like a webinar, instant teleseminar type things where people could call in and get questions answered and where they could learn something. And then that led to people saying, I really need somebody to help me. Would you, be a coach? So that's kind of how that all progressed. It was kind of like as the need came up, then I just did that. But what happened is I've just added one more thing, and one more thing, like we've talked about previously. And it gets tough because now, I'm doing maybe 4 live events a year with a business partner. We teach real estate investors about marketing. That's the primary thing that we're teaching now is how do you get leads in the door? But it's a tough balancing act, and that's why I've been looking for some folks to give me a hand, getting some help into my business.
Yeah, I completely understand that. When I started my blog, I was almost exactly the same way. I hadn't written an article since college, probably. I'd never done a blog. I had to have my friend set up my WordPress account because I didn't even have any idea how to do that. I probably could have figured it out if I would have worked at it, and then I just started writing, and then it was amazing how people responded and said, oh, hey, thanks for posting this and sharing your thoughts on it. And it's kind of like, oh, wow, people actually want to hear what I say. This is kind of cool. It just kind of balloons from there, and it's a lot of fun.
It is fun, and that was the surprising thing was how much I enjoyed it because, like you said, I hadn't written anything in, a lot longer than you, but once you get started, it is a really enjoyable process for most people that are bloggers. It just turns out to be something that you really like doing.
And the funny thing was, before I started blogging, I was doing flips and I had some rental properties, and I thought I knew most everything about investing. And then I got online and I ended up finding websites like BiggerPockets and different sites, and I realized, wow, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. I didn't even know what direct marketing was at that time. I didn't know what the 70% rule was or all these terms. I'm just like, wow, how did I miss all of these different things going on out there? And there's so much information, but it's helped me keep track of goals. It's helped motivate me. It's been a fantastic experience. So I know exactly what you mean.
Then in addition to my blog, I wrote about around 150 articles for BiggerPockets. So that's, a great forum too for people. But yeah, you really do realize as much as you know that you're never done learning. That's for sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And once you realize that, kind of opens your eyes to everything else out there for sure. So when you're doing these live events, and I saw you advertise some of them on Facebook and on your site, are those directed at marketing for new sellers or marketing houses that you already own? What is that directed towards?
The Dealmaker boot camps are directed toward people that have done at least a deal or two, because they're not to show you how to fill out a contract, for instance, but they're for people that have some level of business, and we spend 2 full days on marketing. If they don't have a website, we talk about what components you need for a good lead generation website. They can actually leave there with a website if they want. But we talk about marketing strategies. We do a marketing plan, and we show them free strategies, and we talk about things like direct mail. So it's a 2-day workshop that we have in Nashville where they can actually come out of there with not only a plan, but with some of it done. That it's actually a working workshop. Yeah, I guess is the best way to describe it.
Basing off that, when you're wholesaling properties, now there's a lot that goes on into wholesaling. It's not as simple as some people make it sound, or some of these programs, guarantee you'll make so much money wholesaling in just a short amount of time. There's a lot that goes into it. What do you think the biggest challenges for new wholesalers are?
I think it's finding I think it's 2 things. I think it's finding deals is the big thing, because if you don't know how to generate leads, then you're not going to have any deals. And a lot of how you generate leads is going to depend on your demographics. I know someone who works up in the Philly area. Here's an example. And they have about 70 or 80,000 vacant houses in that city. And so folks that don't have a lot of money can hang up banded signs in some of those inner city neighborhoods. And some of them are not, they're not bad neighborhoods. They're just older neighborhoods. But they could hang up banded signs and get a ton of deals. Now, if you're in my city and you're looking in a middle-of-the-road house, any neighborhood you would hang up a banded sign in is the code officials are probably going to call you. So your strategies depend on what you're looking to accomplish and then how much money you have. But in the end, you have to get leads in the door. So I think that's the biggest challenge. People don't know about marketing, and you have to get good at marketing to be a wholesaler. And then once you get a lead, we kind of touched on this before, is that you really don't know what a good deal is when you're just starting out. You don't always know about the 70% rule. And coming at it if a realtor brings you a house and they'll go, well, but it's $15,000 off the asking price, maybe that realtor's not really an investor. Like you know both sides of the business, but not all realtors do. And maybe the house needs $20,000 worth of work. So you have to learn what a good deal actually is, and I think that's a tough one for a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. No, I would estimate 95% or more of realtors don't have any idea what real investors call a deal. They will deal with owner-occupants, and they'll say the market price may be $150, and they'll see a house listed for $135. It's like, amazing deal. You can't pass this up. You've got to buy this. But all they're looking at is the $15,000 spread. They're not looking at the rehab costs. They're not looking at the time you have to hold it. They're not looking at paying a commission when you sell it. And if you're renting it, they don't know what it rents for. They don't know what the maintenance and vacancy costs will be, which we discussed earlier. So if you're using an agent to get you deals, I think it's almost better that you're determining what the deal is, not the agent, and you've got to be secure in what will make money. And I think a lot of investors get in trouble trusting agents who aren't investor-friendly agents and buying the wrong property or losing their earnest money on the wrong property, like you said.
Yeah, and I mean, I know my first couple of deals, I thought they were good deals, and they were okay deals, but they weren't really good deals. And I was working with a realtor that I thought was an investor when she actually really just attended the investors meetings. And so I tell folks, I think realtors are a great asset to your business if they're also an investor. Now, if they're also an investor like Mark and they come across a great deal, they're probably going to buy that deal. They're probably not going to call you for that deal. So that's the other side of the coin. It's a hard place to be in, actually.
It is. It's a double-edged sword. If you want an investor who knows the market and what you're looking for, but at the same time, if they know all those things, they're buying properties too. So why would they hand off a deal to you where they could make money on it? And you're right. I buy properties all the time myself, and I almost never work with investors unless it's a property. Since I am a HUD listing broker, I can't buy any HUD homes. Nobody in our office can buy a HUD home. So if there's a HUD deal, sure, I'll pass off, great deals to investors I know. Or if it's an investor who's really looking for an agent, I'll send them to someone else on our team. And it's kind of like I don't tell them what I'm looking at. They don't tell me what they're looking at. It's all separate. But at the same time, they are, in a way, competing with me. And I will have investors call me, say, hey, can you find me a deal like you bought on your blog? And I'll be like, no. I wish I could, but
no.
They're so hard to find. For one thing, I can't, it took me 6 months to find my last rental property. And then if I do find another deal like that, I'm not going to pass it off to somebody I don't know who I just talked to on the phone. And I try to be honest with people. But yeah, you're right. It's tough to find. That's why I think it's good that people know the prices, know the numbers, and can figure out what a deal is themselves. And they don't have to rely on a real estate agent to do it for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's absolutely the truth. And sites like your blog or my blog, we try to teach people, but it's, I think somebody told me one time early on, if you're not embarrassed by your offer, you just offer too much. And I think new investors get caught up in that whole thing of, oh, they're never going to take that much. They'll look at the numbers, and then they do what I call a racer math. They start changing up the numbers and, well, maybe the repairs won't cost this much, and maybe I can get $5,000 more than any other house on that street ever sold for. And they start trying to turn it into a deal, and instead of just letting the numbers do the talking. Then that's a big problem with new investors.
They talk themselves into it being a good deal, and exactly. Instead of looking at the numbers, I've been guilty of doing that myself when I first started too, thinking, oh well, I haven't bought a house for a while. I'm sure we can cut the rehab costs on this in some way, or maybe because this house has this feature, it's worth much more than that house, when really it's not. You learn a lot when you do that type of thing.
I think we've all done it when we're starting out. And I tell people, you need to learn from our mistakes. Don't do that. Don't try to talk yourself into a deal, because there'll be another deal that's really a deal.
Now, I saw something really interesting on Bigger Pockets the other day. I don't know if you saw that. There was a thread about wholesaling being illegal.
Yeah, and that's been around a while.
Right, and I was just curious what your thoughts are on that. If you've ever run into problems with that, or I imagine a lot of it comes to the way you're advertising and how you present the properties, but what do you think about the idea that wholesaling is illegal, that you're acting as an agent?
Well, I think Ohio has got those strange laws, and they've kind of gone after, in my opinion, they've kind of gone after the real estate investors. In Kentucky, I double close everything. So I actually buy the house and resell it. And I do that for a number of reasons. It's just a cleaner way that I do it. So I don't really assign contracts. I think I've only ever assigned one contract. But no, I don't think it's illegal. And I because these are the houses that we're buying, realtors, in most cases, they're not going to be buying those, They're looking for houses that are good to list, and I think it's two different things. So no, I don't think there's anything illegal about it. I know from just knowing a lot of real estate agents, almost none of them understand what we do, and they're so commission based that if they're making $3,000 off of a house, they don't think it's even remotely right that a wholesaler would make $10,000 off of a deal. So I think that's where that whole thing is coming from. And again, you can see both sides of it. But I don't really know what to say about the Ohio law, except I'm glad I don't live in Ohio.
Yeah. No, I was really surprised when I read through that, and I didn't realize that it was so strict. I mean, maybe it's just some officials who are trying to put the law down or put their foot down, or who knows what's going on. But yeah, I'd never heard that the things that they were supposedly doing were illegal. It kind of opened my eyes a little bit. But yeah, I imagine it's all state by state scenarios and laws. But yeah, if you buy the house and you sell the house, they can't tell you can't sell your own house. So there's definitely no law against that.
Here in Kentucky, now I know some states, it costs a lot more money to do a closing like we do. They have tax stamps and different things that it might cost them thousands of dollars. But for me here in Kentucky, it costs me about $350 to do that second closing. So it is not a cost. I just figure that in when I buy the house, you know, and it's just the way that I do it. So I don't see, like you said, how if you buy the house, you close on the house, and you resell it in 5 minutes. I don't see how that can be against the law.
Right. Yep. And I agree. Unless you're buying a Fannie Mae REO where they have a clause that you can't sell it in 90 days. But yeah, on most properties that won't affect anything. And one thing I thought that was interesting when I read some of those cases where people were getting a house under contract and then they're advertising it on Craigslist, in the paper, all over the place. And it seems like, you can talk about this more, if you're an established wholesaler, your buyer's list is probably almost as important as finding the properties so that you can sell them quickly and you don't have to scramble around trying to find a buyer after you get a deal. You should already have buyers lined up.
You know, you don't need a whole big bunch of buyers. All you need is a handful of good cash buyers that buy all the time. And people are under this illusion that you need 20 or 50 people or you need this giant push-button list. And in reality, you don't. You need a handful of good, solid investors that buy houses like if I were a wholesaler and I knew you were a rehabber and you've got your money in place and wherever you get that money, if it's an investor-friendly bank or whatever, I mean, who am I going to call? Am I going to call Mark and say, hey, I've got a house, you want to go look at it, and you run over and look at it? Or am I going to go through all that other hassle of hoping that one of those 100 people on my imaginary list are going to actually buy it? Now, I've had to go out. With that being said, I have bought houses that were in areas that I knew no one on my list would, it wasn't an area they would buy in. And I've taken that chance and had to do different marketing strategies. But I got to tell you, that's a really big headache. You're better off starting with a buyer's list, and you can usually build that list by vetting some of the people at your local RIA. Because there's a lot of people there that call themselves buyers, and there's very few that are actually buyers.
Right.
That are set up to buy. But, I think you have to spend time on your buyer's list. You need a handful of good, I call cash buyers, but they could be using an investor-friendly bank. The ones here, you can close anything in 7 to 10 days, probably closer to 10 days. I have a couple that actually write a check. I've got one guy that he's got a home equity line of credit, and he'll write the check out of there and then rehab the house and then sell it. So there's many forms of that a cash buyer can be a cash buyer without actually having all the cash in their pocket.
I've tried to find wholesalers around here, and I have not had any luck. And I've heard many people say the same thing. I don't know if it's our market, but I think I found one person who sent me a few deals that they're close. They weren't quite there, but they're close. And I've probably contacted 20 other people at meetings online who said they're wholesalers. None of them have ever sent me one deal. So
wow.
I don't know. Yeah. I've heard other areas of the country there's a lot of wholesalers. There's a lot of deals out there, but our market is very strong here. Prices have gone up 30% in 2 years, and our inventory is at the lowest it's ever been. So, but maybe one day I'll find a great wholesaler, or someone will start up around here.
Yeah, you need one, because you need somebody to feed you deals, and then you can make their end of the business work too.
Right, exactly. No, I'd love to find new ways to buy properties, because it's getting so hard around here to find those good deals. Our market's going crazy. Great information so far. I have, let's see here, one last question.
Okay.
And hopefully we can all learn a little bit from it. But what was the biggest mistake you ever made, and are you glad it happened?
Well, thankfully I haven't made any really fatal mistakes. My first couple of deals, I paid too much for them. I still made money on them. Knock on wood, I've never not made money on a house, but sometimes I've made less than what I, hoped I would make. So that's probably the biggest thing right there. But the other thing is what we've talked about. I think one of the biggest limiting mistakes that I've had is not hiring sooner, trying to do it all for way too long. And I think that is a huge mistake, like we talked about.
One other thing that I didn't talk about before, too, is when you wait so long to hire somebody that you have to have help because you're so busy, really hard to train them because you're out of time. So I see a lot of people who, they're working 12 hours a day and they hire somebody. It's like, well, when are you going to train them? How are you going to show them what to do? And so, the sooner you can hire people, I always tell people, even if you don't think you need help yet, it's going to make your business better.
Yeah, I talked to someone about a week or two ago, and he said that he had he'd kind of gone the route that a lot of people that, realtors kind of have offices and staffs, but real estate investors usually don't start out that way. They will start out with outsourcing virtual assistants, maybe outsourcing their direct mail and that sort of thing. And this person that I was talking to, he said that he had gone that route. And what he had determined that he actually should have done, and he finally eventually did do, was hire an assistant. And he said he only had her for 5 hours a week in the beginning. But she would do whatever he needed her to do. She could answer the phone. She could send contracts over for closing. She could do some marketing. He taught her along the way, and she eventually went to work for him full time. But he said, looking back, rather than going over here and going over here, he wished he had just gotten an assistant right from the get-go, even if it were only for a couple of hours a week.
Right. No, that's great, because when I hired my first assistant, I didn't hire her full-time. She worked part-time. And then as she got more experience, learned the business, and could do more, I just slowly fed her more and more tasks to do, and she did great. And eventually it's like, hey, do you want to work full-time? And she's like, I'd love to. And it worked out great. And then eventually we hired another person, and then I hired a team manager. And it seems like every time I hire someone, it gives me more time to pursue different things and look at more ways to make money, which is always fun. So
yeah, really, absolutely.
Lots of great information. I really enjoyed having you on the show. What is the best way for people to contact you? Is it to go to your blog?
Yeah, they can go over there. It's the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog. They can contact me over there. You know, I'm happy to answer any questions or help any way I can.
Great. And I almost forgot, you also have your own podcast as well on the blog. And you said you've done close to 50 podcasts,
I've done about 50. I think that's the right number. I believe it's 50. And they're also on my blog, and they're on iTunes. It's called Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. And so, I've interviewed a lot of terrific people, and I think it's very inspirational to hear the people's stories.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so nice to be able to go in your car and listen to a podcast. You don't have to sit down and read everything and kill two birds with one stone. So, very nice. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I wish you luck in the future, and hopefully your new ventures all go very well.
Thanks so much, Mark.
All right. Thank you, and have a great week.